A truck rolls onto a stretch of Taiwan's western shore, the exact coastline an invasion fleet would aim for. It stops. The launcher tilts up and empties its tubes toward the water. Bright flashes against the gray strait. 3 minutes later, the truck is gone. Just an empty patch of sand where the firepower used to be. That was the first time Taiwan ever fired an American HIMARS straight into the Taiwan Strait, the 100-mile gap between the island and mainland China. Beijing called it a deep strike threat. Taipei called it pure defense. Both can't be right. Here's what nobody's saying out loud yet. This wasn't really about 36 rockets. It was about a number Beijing's been running the math on for years. Strap in. The chessboard just moved. Before we get to the weapons, let's set the table. You need 3 things on the map. First, the place. The Taiwan Strait is a stretch of water about 100 miles wide. That's the whole moat protecting the island from the largest army on Earth. At its narrowest, a missile crosses it in minutes. Geography isn't on Taipei's side, and Beijing knows it. Second, why now? This wasn't a random range day. It was the live-fire stretch of Han Kuang, Taiwan's biggest annual war game, the one that rehearses a Chinese invasion. The 58th Artillery Command ran the HIMARS piece, first time ever pointed west toward the mainland. Third, the players. Taiwan fires the rockets. Washington builds and sells them. Beijing watches every flash and files it away. And here's the part the headlines skipped. Taipei isn't unanimous on this. There's a real fight at home. How much to spend, how fast, and whether arming up invites the very war it's meant to prevent. I've sat through enough planning debates to know that argument never ends. But the story really starts with what each side said the moment those rockets hit the water. 2 sides put 2 versions on the wire the same afternoon. Listen to the gap between them. Start with Beijing. Chinese state media framed the drill as a provocation, a deep strike threat dressed up as practice. The message, in their telling, Taipei is the one raising the temperature, and the weapons came from Washington. Keep in mind who's talking. When Beijing's outlets report, they report what the party wants on the page that morning. Now Taipei. Taiwan's military called it the opposite, pure defense. Their framing? This rehearses repelling an amphibious landing, nothing more. One officer put it plainly. His words, on the record. The firing shows the military's determination to protect the homeland. So which is it? Threat or shield? Here's the honest answer. The truth lives in the gap between those 2 press releases. And that gap is exactly what this whole video is about, because both sides are arguing over a word. Provocation, defense. But a word doesn't stop a landing craft. The independent reporting. Reuters, the AP, on the ground in Taichung, confirms the only thing that actually matters. The rockets flew. The system works. The rest is spin. But claims don't decide this. The iron does. Now look at what walked onto that beach. HIMARS, the High Mobility Artillery Rocket System. Strip away the acronym and it's a 5-ton truck with a launch pod bolted on the back. That's the whole trick. The genius isn't the rocket, it's the wheels. Here's why that matters. Old-school artillery sits still and gets found. Counter-battery radar tracks the arc of an incoming shell, runs the math backward, and tells the other guy exactly where you're parked. Then you're the target. HIMARS solves that with one word: speed. Fire the pod, drop the rails, and roll before the enemy's math even finishes. Shoot and scoot. We wargamed that timeline more times than I can count, and the side standing still always lost. What does it fire? The standard load is GMLRS, guided rockets, satellite corrected, landing inside a few meters at roughly 50 miles. Not a dumb barrage, a scalpel. One pod holds 6. Reload is a crane swap of a sealed canister, minutes, not hours. So picture the invasion problem from Beijing's chair. Your landing fleet has to cross open water and bunch up at a few predictable beaches. That's the worst possible target. Slow, packed, exposed. And the launcher that ranges it won't be there when you shoot back. But this isn't the only weapon on the table. And the second one changes the whole map. Here's what wasn't in the press release. HIMARS today is the short game. The long game is what you bolt onto the same truck tomorrow. That truck doesn't just fire those 50-mile rockets. The exact same launcher can swallow a single big missile instead. ATACMS. Range jumps to nearly 200 miles. Same vehicle, same crew, same shoot and scoot. You just changed the ammunition. Sit with that doctrine shift for a second. Two weapons, one launcher, two completely different jobs. The short rocket closes the beach. It kills the landing where it's most exposed. The long missile reaches past the beach, into staging ports and airfields on the mainland coast itself. One says you can't land here. The other says we can hit you before you leave. That's the line Beijing actually fears. A weapon that only defends the shore is a nuisance. A weapon that reaches the launch point is a deterrent. And the math on that second one is brutal. A mobile truck you can't find, holding your own ports at risk for a fraction of what one warship costs. And let's be clear about who's on the hook here. This isn't a Chinese people problem. Ordinary people on both shores want nothing to do with a war. This is a leadership class gamble. Beijing's planners staring at a map that just got harder to cross. Once you see that, the stakes change shape. Look at the chessboard. Now look at the chessboard. The rockets are the easy part. The hard part is the table they're sitting on. Start with the money. A single GMLRS rocket runs a couple $100,000. The amphibious ship it threatens? Hundreds of millions, packed with troops. That's the asymmetry Taipei is buying. Cheap launcher, expensive target. Make crossing the strait cost more than the prize is worth, and the invasion math stops closing. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Washington announced a deal to sell Taiwan 82 more of these launchers. Then Trump sat down with Xi in Beijing, and that package looks frozen. So the same week Taiwan shows off the weapon, the pipeline for more of it goes quiet. The shore fires rockets, the capital trades chips. And that's the real tension. Is HIMARS a wall Taipei is building, or a bargaining card Washington is holding? I've watched enough arms packages move and stall to know they're never just about hardware. They're leverage. So where does it go? Three roads. Most likely, the drill becomes the new normal. Low-grade pressure both sides absorb. Downhill, Beijing answers with a bigger show of force and the strait gets louder. Or the off-ramp, the frozen sail quietly thaws as a sweetener in some larger deal. Which road wins isn't decided on that beach. It's decided in rooms full of people who'll never touch a launcher. My read, and this is one analyst's call after 30 years of watching plays like this, that drill wasn't aimed at China's Navy, it was aimed at China's planners. The whole point of a deterrent is to be seen before it's ever used, and Beijing saw it. The frozen arms deal doesn't weaken that signal. It sharpens it because now the weapon is also a chip on the table. That's deliberate. That's leverage working in real time. Anvil math. When the cost curve crosses the capability curve, the doctrine has to bend or break. A cheap truck that holds an expensive fleet at risk just crossed it. Beijing's invasion timeline got more expensive overnight. So here's my question for you. Does a weapon like this actually keep the peace by making the war too costly to start? Or does arming the shore just push Beijing to move sooner, before the wall gets any taller? There's a real case on both sides. Drop your read in the comments. The question of the day is pinned, and I'm reading the first 50 in real time. Sharpest takes shape next week's analysis. If this gave you a clearer read on the play, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to push it to the next person who needs it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Ring the bell. The math doesn't stand still. I'm Anvil, signing off from Theater Zero.